Do we need anyone to warm the audience up with? I went to the Johnny Carson show many, many years ago I think, yeah, we're in Las Vegas or something. And I had never experienced it before, but you sit in this large room and this guy comes out and he starts to pump the audience like, you really got to be excited here. You know, when Johnny comes out, I want you to just light this building up. That's not going to happen tonight, okay? We have a different approach this evening. Am I to wait for Hal, or should I just... We're good now. Okay, we're good. My name is Victor Vigiani, and I am the news director for Zealand Communications, as Chris pointed out to you. That's a news organization that works right across Canada to bring the news of what this strange phenomenon is all about. And we try as best we can to interact and engage mainstream media to recognize that there is something going on the planet they have to pay attention to. And they've been doing a better job at it now than they did when I first started. As a matter of fact, today I was picking someone up from the airport, and we're driving the car, and we get a call from CBC right on my cell phone. We're driving along, and I'm trying to negotiate on the 427 in Toronto, and this man starts to talk to me from CBC. He's a very interested journalist on one of the major CBC television programs. He starts asking me all these questions about, is there a cover-up? So I said to him, does an accordion player wear rings? You know, there's no other answer to that question. And he went on and just really, and what amazed me about it is the paucity, the virginness of his understanding of what this whole thing was all about. Very intelligent man, no doubt about it, but just did not have a single clue as a journalist about what is going on in the stuff that you and I live and breathe virtually every single day. And if you're like me, it's exactly what happens. And then when you see a movie like you just did today, you get to realize that we are part of a reality that a large number of the rest of the planet just doesn't get. They just don't get it. And I think we've made some really good inroads in trying to have them come to an understanding that there's something going on, and the nature of that different reality is couched in all kinds of different language, different experiences, and I think what Travis's movie just showed you today was that this is part of us as humanity. And we're making the point on Saturday at the UFO hearing that we're having in Brantford that I feel, and the kind of experiences that Travis has been through, and the many experiencers that have had these different kinds of things happen to them, that we, in fact, whether we realize it or not, and I've really grappled with the issue, that everything that's happening is pointing to the fact that we, as a species, are on the threshold of the next step in our evolution because of the contact. That's what, to me, that's what it means. We are engaging these, whoever these people are, or these beings are, and it represents the next step in our evolution. Where we go with it, how we handle it, who the heck knows? But the fact of the matter is they're here, we just have to deal with it. It's up to us to deal with it. It's not up to the government to tell us what it's all about. It really isn't. I mean, I firmly believe the idea of disclosure is important, the government acknowledging what's going on. But as soon as we start asking the government, we're going cap in hand to the government, say, would you please tell us the story, please? No, that's not how this works. So I think we really have to do this on our own. And the kinds of things that are happening to the contactees, or the experiencers, whatever you want to call them, is something that represents contact. We are being contacted. The contact has already happened. Let's face it. Contact has been made. It's just that the rest of humanity is not up to speed on this. And it's up to us doing the kinds of things we're doing today, the things that are going to happen at the hearing on Saturday, and all the other really great things that are happening across the planet as far as awakening people. It's up to us to let humanity know that there is something going on. So that's part of this evening, and we want to engage both Travis and Richard Dolan and sort of pick their brains and have them sort of share some of the more intimate ideas that they've been associated with for a number of years. And there's no way that we can encapsulate it all in one evening, but we'll try our best. So if we could, I'd ask you to, if you want to have an opportunity to speak to or ask a question of either Richard or Travis, we would ask you to come to the mic. I'll set this back up. And we don't want to line this way because the traffic will sort of block the camera. So if you could stand maybe off to one side, and then respect the persons that are up here, and have them ask their question, engage for a minute, 2 minutes, keep your questions brief. And then we just go forward with a nice, open, honest, and comfortable dialogue with two very, very special people. Okay, so I guess that's where it's going to go, okay? All right, let's put the mic back and we'll get going. Anybody want to start? Who wants to be the... Sid's hand is up. That means something. Okay, Sid Goldberg.
Welcome to you both. Travis, this question's for you. And the question is, many of us are familiar with your experience as it happened, and I'm curious to know what has happened since then to you, if anything, that is a continuation of that experience.
I get that question about every time I go anywhere, and my standard answer used to be, well, if anything more happened, I wouldn't tell anybody. But that was with the exception of if I can document it. I can talk about anything I can document. So there was one pretty dramatic thing that happened just 2 or 3 years ago. There was a MUFON meeting in Burbank, and the head of MUFON, Jan Harzan, was speaking, and Tracy Torme, the screenwriter on Fire in the Sky, was there. And when we left, we were driving up the 5 freeway towards the 10 to come back to Arizona. And we saw these 3 lights coming towards us, and it became quite apparent we were looking at one of those giant black triangles. I mean, it was so low and so huge, it was just astonishing that something that big, could be over a city like Los Angeles, and, the traffic on the freeway wouldn't be stopping on. But it came right over and stopped right over us. And to me, this thing was so huge, it was, bigger than a Walmart, maybe, it could be a quarter mile across. It was very low and very close. And I could see in detail these lights at each point of the triangle. It didn't look like a mere light fixture. It looked like some kind of what would probably be propulsion, because it was a sort of a shimmering effect to it. It was a sort of a peach colored, sort of a light orange color, but sort of, shimmering the way a flame would if you were looking straight into a jet engine or looking at the burner on a gas stove. But you could see that, but when it changed direction, it actually rotated. These 3 lights switched like that and then headed off towards the coast. Well, my son was driving. My girlfriend at the time was in the back. She could look up through the glass and see the surface of this thing. It was just so dramatic. When we got home, my older son, that one wasn't with us, found a website that I had been unaware of. It's called UFOstalker.com. And they have it set up where they have maps and little circles with numbers in them for all the different sightings. And there was, over a dozen sightings the very next morning of people who had found that website and reported it. So there was a great deal of corroboration there. So that I feel free to talk about that as a subsequent sighting. My own theory is that this could be some secret military craft of some kind.
I was going to ask, how long did that experience last, and was there any electronic interference in your vehicle and any missing time?
No, we did not notice any missing time. We definitely questioned that, but we went through a time zone to get back to Arizona, and so we figured that one out. But there was no apparent interference with the vehicle, and it was just, just came right at us, came and stopped right over the top, turned, and went off. But very dramatic, very unmistakable.
Richard, did you want to comment on that in terms of the triangle aspect of it and technology?
Sure. I mean, the triangles have been seen very regularly in high numbers since the mid-1970s, although sightings actually go back even earlier than that. I don't know what Travis saw, to be honest with you. I do know the black triangles have been seen with crystal clarity in the U.S. and in Canada. I didn't know about your sighting, Travis. I personally investigated a case that took place in Kingston, Ontario, 2003. And I got to know that witness very well. It was like a sister to me now, I guess. That was a perfect black triangle with sharp corners, lights at each corner, very low, totally silent. And this witness got a very excellent look at it. Excellent. One of the most conscientious people I think I could ever know. I think it's a good sighting. And then you find so someone is flying these things. And the real question is, I'm glad we're doing this media thing on Saturday, because honestly, it seems to me the important question is, the first question is not so much who is flying these things, but the question is, can we please have an open public discourse on this, because someone is flying these black triangles. They're not supposed to exist. They're using something other than gasoline to go from point A to point B. And whatever that is important for our society and for our civilization, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, I make the point in any presentations that I do that, these craft, wherever they're from and whatever their nature is, they're not stopping off at Jupiter to fill up with SO gas.
The action's going on here on Earth.
That's right, exactly.
So whatever we've got going on here, we've got this amazing planet. We've got all this water. We've got all these minerals and all these crazy people, all these life forms. Why would they not be interested in looking at us? So so there's going to be, I think, a lot of activity and observation and interaction.
Yeah. In terms of what you saw and what you've investigated, and what a lot of us have seen before, one of the questions that I have is, it really perplexes me, is why they're being so elusive. I mean, they come and go, and they show themselves in ways that it's like almost like a game of hide and seek. I mean, not that I would want them to do this, but I mean, why wouldn't they pick a Super Bowl Sunday? I mean, I'm being, it sounds naive, I realize that, but the fact of the matter is, the elusive nature of what they're doing and the way they come and go with impunity in our atmosphere, you would figure that, okay, well, do we have an agenda here to make sure that we kind of just give them a peek? Because if we did something really, really demonstrative in terms of, over Times Square or the Super Bowl or whatever, then we give away the whole enchilada, and I don't know if that's what they really want to do. Comment?
Well, that's my theory, that it's obviously not, oops, we accidentally got seen. I believe that with their technology, they could do everything they're doing here and remain completely undetected, if that was their desire. But at the same time, they're not landing openly and saying, here we are. So it is my theory that it's a kind of a conditioning, and they always want to stop short of that point where it causes the kind of havoc that would happen.
I would just add a speculation that my personal opinion, that they're operating on a level beyond what we can do. And our perception of reality has its limits. It would be like dogs trying to understand where humans go when we pull out of the driveway and go to work. Can you imagine dogs having conferences and talking amongst themselves, like, where do my people go? I feel like that's us trying to figure them out. Like, they're operating at a different understanding of space and time reality. I think they can enter and leave it, and but I agree with Travis. Like, I think if they did not want to be seen, they would never be seen.
Well, I have a border collie, and I know when I leave in the morning, he has a group after, trying to find out. Yeah. I figure this dog, if he has an opposable thumb, he could do all my typing for me. Leslie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Victor, and thank you, Travis and Richard. We're so happy you're here. My name is Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist who specializes in working with experiencers and contactees, and I'm really only one of a handful of MUFON certified people who are doing this kind of work. So my question would be for you, Travis. Most people, when they come to me to look at an experience, come with fragmented conscious memories, usually of one incident. And when we get in there with proper hypnosis techniques, generally we find that there is a pattern of experience that has begun oftentimes very early in childhood. Do you feel now, in the fullness of time since your profound experience, that it was an isolated event, kind of a wrong place, wrong time type of thing? Or do you feel that you, in fact, may have even more experiences from your earlier life that you may not have yet explored or even been aware of?
Well, I've always, gone with the explanation that this was just something out of the blue that just, really wouldn't even been as extensive as it was if I hadn't done something kind of unexpected there. But, of course you look back and you think about things from all the way back to childhood, and, there's, some incidents that I wonder about that it could have been something, but, you're just a child, how do you know?
Did you have more than one session with the eminent psychiatrist that you mentioned that you had worked with as far as hypnosis?
I only underwent the hypnosis one time with Dr. Harder.
Okay, all right.
Travis and I once shared it's like a 7-hour car ride across the state of Pennsylvania. You remember that?
Yeah.
In fact, you told me what was wrong with my front right axle there thing. I had some kind of problem going. My car was in bad shape. But during that, if you remember, I was kicking around a theory about Travis's abduction, and I just wanted to put this out there because it does seem like it's a freak thing, wrong place, wrong time. But if you know Travis, and you can really tell, Travis he's really not a normal guy. He's very, he's not. He pretends he is, but he's actually super intelligent, very deeply thoughtful. And my feeling is he's this young guy in his truck with these 6 other guys. I don't know the other guys Travis worked with, but I'm going to take a guess that he was even then operating at a different level. My theory. And I really wondered, I know I asked you this, when that craft appeared and you just got out of the car, were you being guided? It's totally possible because during these UFO encounters that people have, people don't often act in normal ways. No. They don't have normal emotional responses. Sometimes it's this complete fear factor, panic. Sometimes it's this ridiculous calm that doesn't make sense either. And I could never speak for you, Travis, but I have to admit, I've often wondered, and I don't know what you think about that.
I was kind of impulsive. I did, things that were wild and crazy guy kind of a thing, roping horses, the wild horses, stuff that, good common sense would, kind of make you not do. But, Alan was he said to him it looked like I was in some kind of a trance, like I was being pulled towards it. And Steve, said he thinks they were after me, but, to me it just seemed like my own wild impulse to get out and run over there. Yeah. But then they say, but they can make you think it's your idea, So
Indeed.
The jury's out that way, but to me it just felt like my own impulse to go see it up close before it took off. And I was thinking it would leave before I got that close.
Wow. Well, if you ever want to explore anything further, you know where to go.
Okay.
We're here. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Go ahead.
My name is Janet King. I'm a new MUFON member, so I'm thrilled to be here with you folks. This is just an experience. My question is, from your experience, have you had any indication that you may have received an implant of any kind? The reason I ask is when you were talking about your experience with the hovering triangle, it sort of reminded me how, that we put collars on caribou and, and we fly over and we sort of monitor where they are, even though we don't interfere with them, we kind of monitor. And I wondered if you'd had any indications possibly that...
Well, I don't know that the implants are tracking devices, but, it was something I was really worried about and for some time afterwards. But I had upper body x-rays, a whole battery of medical tests actually in the following days. But there wasn't anything that I could detect being there. Okay. But some people think they can track people without a device, so I don't know.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Other question, anyone? At the back of the room, yes, come forward.
Question for you, Travis. Your town, Snowflake, I believe it was called, very religious town. Were you religious before? Maybe based on your last answer, probably not, but I'd like to hear a little bit about it. Were you a believer in this phenomenon before? And what was that transition like for you afterwards when you came back?
Well, I didn't become more or less religious. I've always considered myself to be a spiritual sort of person and a very philosophical person. So I don't think it narrowed that perspective at all. I think in a way it broadened it. And you know, people who think that the reality of this phenomena in some way diminishes religion, I don't think that's the case at all, you know. And I could go a lot further into that, but
Did you say diminishes religion? I didn't. You said
No, I said-
you don't think
no,
it does?
it did not
Okay.
diminish.
Yeah.
I think it expanded my perspective in terms of, you know, people think, well, if it's not in the Bible, then it can't exist. And I say, well, Antarctica's not in the Bible, and we know it exists. Native Americans aren't in the Bible. So, you know, I think that people who have that perspective are selling God short, that, you know, what is there about all-powerful and all-knowing that you don't understand, you know? So it's a much bigger universe than they conceive of.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Travis. My name's Dashel. Just in a sense, when you got your memories back, I know, like you said, like things were really blurry, but the extraterrestrials that you saw and the triangle that you saw, did it look anything similar to the Dr. Jonathan Reed case?
I'm not too familiar with the Reed case, and you know, in the opening pages of my book, I quote Emerson: "Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance." Because I took such great exception, like the UFO skeptic that was attacking us. His first writings had us as 3 people riding in a car rather than 7 men in a truck. I mean, he was that vague on the details, and he was already in attack mode. So I have always, you know, stuck by the idea that I'm not going to comment on other cases unless I've thoroughly investigated them myself. And that's Richard's territory. He's the investigator. So
I just have a big mouth. That's really all that I do. That's about it.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Elle. It's very nice to meet you in person. So my question is kind of twofold. Just going back to the triangular crafts, I did read online that those tend to be reverse engineered, and they belong to the like Black Ops government. And the second question is just a comment. The second question is, do you know, statistically speaking, what is the most common type of craft that is seen by people?
Yeah, I'll field that one. So regarding your first point on the black triangles, there's absolutely a tremendous amount of discussion about these being reverse engineered craft. I personally believe that they are. Although I don't think exclusively. Is this microphone working? Okay. So for example, I'll just mention, I haven't published this anywhere, but I've talked occasionally. I had a very detailed conversation with a retired Boeing engineer about a year and a half ago at this point. He retired about in 2000 or so, and I know him and his wife. He's very, very intelligent, lovely people. He was very explicit with me that Boeing was reverse engineering black triangles from extraterrestrial technology in the 1980s and 90s. There's a lot that he did not know. His claim to me was that there was a lot they had not mastered in terms of the technology, and that they were losing pilots and losing craft. So if he's accurate, and I mean there could be other organizations replicating these too, but in the case of Boeing, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to me that all the black triangles would be theirs, because my impression from him is that they hadn't really mastered it. There's the talk about the TR-3A and the TR-3B, the black manta. We don't know for sure, but they probably exist, something like that. But also, you know, there are very excellent triangle sightings that go really far back, actually. I'm the publisher, not the author, but the publisher of a book on triangles by a fellow named David Marler. And his work is excellent, and he really shows this phenomenon goes way back, at least as far back as the flying saucers themselves. Not as many, but they're out there. So I think the jury's out. I think that I think some of these triangles are not all ours. That's my own opinion. As far as the most common sightings, if you go online to the National UFO Reporting Center, it's an easy site to go to. And in fact, what's great about it is that he breaks it down among other things, like by date, but also by shape. And I'm trying to recall. Triangles are a common one, but the most common is typically a bizarre light in the sky. And you also see a lot of circular, spherical, and triangles and disc-shaped. I'm not sure today in what order, to be honest with you. I should check myself. They're all out. They're all being seen.
Before the next question, I'd like to share an experience that I had. In 1996, my partner and I went down to, actually we drove through New Mexico and Nevada and all that area, and Dulce and all, and we spent 6 nights just outside of Area 51. 3 nights, one at one point, then we drove across back to New Mexico and then came back for another 3 nights, literally right outside on Groom Lake Road, camping out. And as we're driving along Highway 375 in the Tickaboo Valley, so you're going kind of, I guess you're going sort of southwest, and my wife noticed over the mountains at the time, I said, Victor, there's something going on over the mountains. So I stopped the car, and I got out of the car, and I looked over the car, the hood of the roof of the car, and over the mountains, and up above me, at about that angle, there was this it was a beautiful night out, just before dark, very few, a lot of stars in the sky, but there was this bright light about a third of the size of the sun, or the moon. And it just looked bizarre. It was just really bright blue-white. And as I looked at it, it became very diaphanous. It became like a snowflake. It just sort of expanded and pulsed in and pulsed out, pulsed in, pulsed out. It began to look like a snowflake. You could almost see right through it. And then it started to spin very slowly, and then more quickly, and then more quickly, and it began to spin very quickly, and then it stopped spinning, and at that point, the thing turned into 3 dots, 3 orange dots in a triangle shape. And it just turned from white into these 3 dots. And I was just looking, I just could not believe my eyes. And at that point, those 3 dots began to spin even faster and faster and faster, and in a really quick fashion, it coalesced back into the white dot, and it went bang. It just flicked right out. And I stood there over the car. I was just nonplussed. I could not believe what I saw. And it took, I would say, I don't know, a minute and a half. That's a long time. I mean, when you take a look at something. So what kind of, of engineering would they have put forward in order to have something, some physical thing, do that kind of, maneuver? I would have no idea.
I would just add, back in the 1980s, all right, there was an aerospace journalist named James Goodall. Probably some people know this name. He wasn't a UFO guy. He was an aviation aerospace journalist, and but he happened to cultivate a number of sources in Groom Lake, which is, part next to Area 51, basically. And one of these guys, he said, had about 11 years' experience working on black projects at Groom. And Goodall asked him point blank, are there UFOs? The guy says, absolutely, yes, they exist. But then he was talking, and the implication that I've always gotten is that UFOs that we did not make. But then this guy also said, exact quote, according to Goodall, we have things in the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas envious. So this is like 1985. So, and then you get these leaks that there's quite a few of these that point to super advanced, unbelievably advanced human technology that presumably is derived from something that we didn't create, but that we have gone really far. There's a story of this so-called ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle. That's from 1988. That's also going back. And I believe this story. And essentially it's in a hangar at Lockheed Hellendale facility, a witness, a very excellent witness, saw 3, okay, large, medium, and small size acorn-shaped type flying saucer type things, and they were hovering. No cables were suspending them; they were just there. A 4-star general was at a podium describing these as alien reproduction vehicles, stating that they had gone throughout the solar system. This is 1988. So if this is true, and again, you know, you can believe it or not. I think I believe it. That would indicate we've got a classified technology that's been off the charts for decades.
Yeah, the stealth bomber, when it was unveiled, was actually 30-year-old technology at that point.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, even if 1/10 of what you're describing is true, I mean, there's got to be something to this. Go ahead.
Welcome to Toronto, Richard and Travis. Victor. My name is Michel Deschamps, and I'm the creator of an historical website from up north in Sudbury, which is basically a tribute to all the research that's been done in the past. 2 questions, one for each of you. In 1993, I got a hold of Travis. I don't know if you remember that phone call. I got your number from Stanton Friedman, and he told me not to hand it out. And I had asked you a question, I think, about the texture of the skin, because I was wondering if you had pushed one of the beings back and how it felt. And for Richard, what are your thoughts on the fact that landing cases and sightings of humanoids seem to have dwindled in recent years?
Well, I described the feeling of my forearm contacting one of these small creatures, and that it was softer and lighter than I expected, but I didn't actually touch their skin. Now, the skin did have a very soft, translucent look, like there was a lot of moisture there, but not wet on the surface, if you understand. And what was the other part of the question?
Well, also I wanted to know if, well, that was basically the question, what the texture was, and the fact that you're in your case, which is unlike the movie Fire in the Sky, you actually encountered human-looking beings. Yeah, which is something very important that should have been mentioned.
They felt very dense and very strong. And, you know, I was in a weakened condition, but in spite of that, I could feel they were much stronger than I was. And I was in pretty good shape at the time.
Do you mean physically stronger?
Yeah.
I'll just try to answer your question as well, Michelle. I think, yeah, first of all, there's a very long modern history, I guess we could say, of humanoid-type creatures being seen in conjunction with landed. So a lot of them in the 1950s, in Europe in particular, 1954, many really well attested. And then throughout the 50s and 60s and throughout the 70s, the last big major wave of those, I believe, was 1978, a long time ago, where you got actually hundreds of such cases in that year. So now they're actually, I don't know that they've all stopped. I came across a few that were even in China in the 1980s. But I think you're right. Like, by and large, you don't really hear these sightings. What you do hear nowadays are sightings by people of what appear to be hybrids or humans, not in conjunction with landings for the most part. I don't know that they've gone away entirely, but I have to agree with you that they don't seem to get the attention. And I don't really know why, to be honest with you. When you look at the ones from the 50s and 60s, there's somewhat of a consistency in their description. They're short, kind of large heads. Not like the Greys, though, but similar in a way. What's baffling about this phenomenon, is actually maddening to me, is the total variety that people see. There was a case in the early 1970s in the U.S., 1973, where 2 men saw this creature that was like out of some sci-fi horror movie, you know, where they were floated into a craft, and they were very credible people. So some of these creature sightings are just really, so I wonder one of a couple of things. One is that there's some pretty wild genetic experimentation done on these creatures, which actually really would make sense to me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect any of these to be naturally occurring creatures. None of them. I would expect all of them to be artificially created. I mean, just look where we are with our own ability to, genetic manipulation and nanotech, and then the other thing that I might expect is that they might be holographic projections or mind projections. I mean, this phenomenon is maddening to me because I have not found one single explanation that actually truly accounts for every crazy thing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jacques Vallée once said, if this were as simple as beings coming from another planet in metal spaceships, like how disappointing that would be, because there's so much strangeness
Yeah.
that just goes beyond our understanding. And honestly, I've thrown myself into this, and I don't know if I'll ever really get to the bottom of it myself.
Yeah.
I enjoy trying. It's not,
Same
but I
here,
don't know
because
if
I investigated a landing case on Manitoulin Island in 1990. Well, actually, I got there in 91. And people were saying it was a hoax. I went to the property, the actual site, and it's actually like 1/4 mile into the woods in a clearing surrounded by trees. So on the main road, you couldn't see it from the main road. If it had been a hoax, I would have placed it alongside the road. And I actually know 2 or 3 people that personally had encounters with aliens. Like, I either saw them through a telescope,
And that was in 1990?
The landing case in Manitoulin was 1990. It took place in mid-September, and I got there in June of 91, and it still survived. It survived one winter, and then subsequently went back. It was just a layer, a 3/4-inch layer of gravel on a large 80-foot, 90-foot diameter surface of limestone, and the gravel was blown away, leaving 2 donut-shaped indentations. And I spoke to Ted Phillips about that, and he says that's typical of a small craft. And obviously there
Right.
was 2 crafts there, because I thought initially there was one craft that left, something blue from underneath, but he didn't think that made sense either. And being there, when you're actually at a site, it just gives you the heebie-jeebies. It's almost like you don't belong there, but you know something happened. And I recently found out that we may have a witness who actually saw the lights descending in the bush. That may have caused that.
Well, it's always worth looking into. I think
Yeah.
that there are still landing cases, and there are probably sightings, but it is true, they don't really get the attention.
And
that they
if
do.
only 10% of the sightings get reported, 90% go unreported. And so I can't report to the people back home what's the latest sighting if they're not reporting to me.
No.
So that's a problem too. Thank
Well,
you.
maybe a part of the problem is people are asking the wrong question or questions. I mean, they say, what is the alien agenda in the singular? And what is the explanation for this phenomena? I'd say all of the above. I mean, there's, just any explanation you come up with, some of it is that, and some of it's not.
Question here? Travis, hello.
Hello.
This is my first time ever attending to one of these events, but I think I want to salute you as an ambassador to the world to share your story, because it is fascinating. And for you to persevere all these decades demonstrates a commitment, a conviction, and perhaps the integrity that I think you deserve when you tell your story. One of the questions that I want to put to you, and perhaps the only question, is not so much the technology realm, but the moments that you were there. And I'm not sure about time, how to measure it. You were gone a few hours, perhaps. You thought, some people said you were gone 5 days. But actually, can you sort of encapsulate your emotional state of mind or sense of consciousness and how you had a sense of a social interaction with these beings? In other words, do they have a social dimension? I mean, and I understand this whole scenario is one of nervous energy, presumably, and you're not, I don't know how you can describe, but I'm more curious about the beings, their social sense of communication with you. Do you have anything to share with us?
Oh, wow.
Very good question.
I don't think I was very conversational. I was pretty much out of my mind with fear and just babbling and raving like a maniac. So I don't think, we could judge too much about their, they definitely seem to be communication amongst the 3 what are called grays, because they, acted in concert, very cooperative and that sort of thing, except, simultaneous motion, that kind of thing. But, I didn't hear any talking amongst them. I do think they're probably telepathic. And I think that the huge discomfort I felt under their stare was due to them attempting to do something telepathically that wasn't working. Because when that energy hit me, and when I first regained consciousness, I believe I was still in a very barely alive state. I felt mortally wounded, and they were still trying to restrain me for my own good, and because I was a threat to them. I was 3 times their size, but that was very excruciating. So I had the chance to meet some of these school kids from that case in Zimbabwe. There were 60 school children at recess in the middle of a broad daylight. This craft came down and these beings came out and communicated with them through this stare. And so I asked them, did it give you that squirmy, horrible feeling in your head? And they said, no, it was pleasant. The message was friendly and there wasn't that horrible feeling. So that was the reason that was in my nightmares for so long after that, was that feeling that it gave me, but it wasn't working. And so I think they gave up on that and left. It was at that point that they couldn't get near me. So they, I think, probably enlisted the help of these human-looking beings, somebody that I would trust more, and finish the repairs.
Claude Limburger from EarthMysteryNews.com. Thank you for showing up. It's telling your story. It's good. Similar question to what was just happening there. On a personal note, I'd like to know if you did feel if there was some sort of empathic ability from these people, or were they non-empathic? Did they care about you, or did you feel like that there was a caring, or was it they were just, we're just dealing with.
Well, in hindsight, I feel that it was caring.
Okay.
But it took me decades to overcome that feeling of absolute terror that I felt. And that was caused by a whole combination of factors that added to the fear factor over layer upon layer. First of all, the pain I was feeling, the feeling of suffocation more than anything. In the movie, they show the actor being held down on a table, membrane over his face. He's struggling to scream through it, struggling to breathe through it. Well, there was no membrane, but if you had shown the actor just breathing hard and looking panicked, you wouldn't get it. There's nothing like the feeling of suffocation to generate panic. But on top of that, I felt mortally wounded. I felt trapped. It was claustrophobic, dimly lit, to suddenly see these strange beings so close to me. And on top of that, the feeling that I needed to defend myself or to run away, and feeling like I could barely move. So all those things combined to just push the fear factor, over the limit. And, further to the idea that energy beam hitting me had scrambled the neural circuits to where they couldn't use their normal telepathic control thing, is the EEG that I had right after I was returned. The technician was not told who I was. I was put in under an assumed name, and because of all the intense media scrutiny and all this. And this was at world famous Barrows Neurological Research Hospital there in Phoenix. The technician noted an unusual brainwave pattern. And so we're going to do some follow-up research on that. Dr. Kitai, the Phoenix Light doctor, has some doctors who are willing to do some follow-up. We're going to repeat it, see if that unusual pattern is still there, and then have neuroscientists compare this to the kind of pattern you would get from somebody who had been hit by lightning or had been electrocuted or something like that. So there's a lot of follow-up here on that particular question. But I really think that was probably why it wasn't working out there, that crazy hysterical.
Well, just to follow up, when you saw the beings and their interactions, who would you say was in charge? Was it the human-like beings or the smaller ones?
I get that question. It's a good question, and I wondered because my own speculation at first was that this was an intervention by these human-looking people, that these smaller creatures had done something that they shouldn't, and they were taking me back from them. But now, after decades of musing on this, I think that they were probably cooperating in some way. I didn't see them together, so I can't say that there was, for certain what the nature of the relationship was, but probably fortunate in any case because I was returned in one piece and healthy.
Okay, thank you very much.
We just have a few minutes left. It's a little after 8, I think. I'm not sure exactly what the time frame is, Chris, but I just wanted to broach a question. I mean, we're all here right now and engaging in this kind of conversation. And I wonder to myself quite often a couple of things. Number one is this happening anyplace else here tonight in Toronto? Probably not. This is a very, very unique event. And this kind of discourse is not happening enough. And I think one of the things that we have to pay attention to, and with all due respect to the number of people who've had these kinds of experiences, they talk about it openly, they go on to different programs on TV and the kinds of things we saw tonight. But my concern is with the unseen and the unheard, the people in the back alleys of Toronto and New York who are suffering from mental illness and who are really struggling in their life and trying to deal with the experiences that we're talking about this evening. And I'm wondering, what your perceptions would be about the unseen, the unheard, the people who have no outlet to expand upon what they might have undergone in the same way that you went through. I feel very badly for these people, and this was a topic of discussion that I had with Dr. John Mack in 1996. I visited him in his office, and we spoke about that issue of the unseen and the unheard and the children that are going through this. So I'm wondering if, just a comment by each one of you on those two things.
Well, I've had people, ask me, what was the process like? How do you learn to cope? And I've had people ask me to write up what that process was like. And, at first I resisted the idea, because, every case is different. Every person is going to have their own unique set of problems and things to overcome. But, there may be some common ground that might help people to understand more of the inward work that I went through all those years.
I would add, I think that this is extremely important, what you're raising here, Victor. I know for a fact that there are many people in this room, because I've spoken to some of you who have had some very bizarre, inexplicable experiences. Maybe it's a majority for all I know. It's a lot. When I scratch the surface of our little culture, I mean, I run into people all the time who have inexplicable experiences. They think they're the only one. They don't know who to talk to. And then they face a culture with media figures like Neil deGrasse Tyson who make fun of them, all right? Whatever you think about this man, he's great, but he makes fun of UFO abductees, and I know because I've heard him say this is very much beneath him. And it's not just him. This is a major cultural part of our discourse that goes on, and it's insulting and it's denigrating no matter what is happening to these people. It is sometimes exhilarating, but it's sometimes traumatizing because we don't know how to make sense out of it. And what we absolutely need is to know that we're not alone. That's number one. How do we do that? Well, we do that because we will do that by having a public discourse that's actually intelligent, mature, that doesn't sound like we're a bunch of 11-year-olds making fun of things. But the problem is, I believe, we're dominated by a power structure that controls the media for a purpose. The purpose is to keep us infantilized and keep us dumb, keep us separated and atomized. We're dealing with the most unbelievable phenomenon imaginable all by ourselves. That's the reality. So what our job, everyone in this room, our job is to be brave, number one. That means you speak about it. That means you be your own hero and you educate other people about this and just be fearless about it. What I've discovered over these years doing this, when I started researching this years ago, I thought, oh, no one must ever know. And then I discovered, well, I have to tell people, and I realized that people actually are really into it, most of them. But the way is that what matters is how you do it yourself. So you have to be forthright. You have to know what you're talking about, and spread the word. I think regarding disclosure, I don't want to do a whole lot to talk about on disclosure, except I firmly believe now that it will only happen when the culture is ready. We have to make the culture ready, and then the politics will follow. And the only way the culture will be ready is by people like us to do everything that we can do. It's a really heroic struggle because we're fighting an institutional structure that just wants to marginalize us. But I think in time we're going to win this one. We have to. We have no choice.
Given the reason for this coming Saturday.
Yeah.
Chris, there's a gentleman behind you. Did you have
I'm actually going to ask a question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go, Mr. Rusak, go right ahead.
Yes, well, thank you guys. So it just dawned on me, we're here screening the true story of Travis Walton. Back when Fire in the Sky came out, and it's actually a perfect panel to ask this question. Victor, with your background in the media and how they control information, Richard, in your historical perspective on things, and Travis, with your experience, I just want each of you to touch on the pros and the cons. Hindsight's always 20/20, but on the release of Fire in the Sky, what impact did that have on ufology? What impact did that movie have on popular culture? And if there's both pros and cons to the release of that movie?
Well, I'll take that one first. The movie was groundbreaking in that it was the first time Hollywood had ever recounted a real-life event. So, the promotion of the movie and all that was, okay, we'll take this seriously. The downside, of course, was it was a perpetuation of the invading monsters theme, which, was rather consistent the way I interpreted it initially. So, it took me decades to overcome that negative interpretation because of the way fear and pain and all that colored the thing. So I think it's helpful to point out the process that I went through to go from looking at it as malevolent to seeing it as possibly beneficial. And, Barbara Lamb has recounted that she would regress people who initially perceived their entire experience to be negative and then find out that they had had some medical issue resolved, or they come to see it in a different light. And I compare it to a little child that's taken to the doctor or the dentist, and they're screaming, they're terrified, and they're traumatized, and you're not going to convince them it was for their own good, but, we know it was. They got their tooth fixed or their injury treated, and so the negative perception, is something that it's only natural, but we can get past that. I gave a talk to a group of actors, producers, just Hollywood people here a year or so ago, and I was trying to encourage them to look at this as what a wealth of story ideas that there would be potentially with this incredibly, advanced technology. To continually go back to invading monsters as the theme, is rather short-sighted, unimaginative.
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. I agree pretty much with Travis on most of that, although I don't really have a personal judgment on whether I think these beings are benign to us or indifferent or even hostile. I'm not sure. I think maybe there's a bit of all of that, possibly. But I do think, actually, the release of that movie in the early 90s was a very positive thing. Overall, as inaccurate as some of the portrayal was, we all know. You think back on the culture of the early 90s, it was a different situation, and it was kind of like the Dark Ages, pre-web, pretty much, and there really wasn't a lot of public discussion on this. I know a lot of people who saw that movie, and to this day, they said that was actually a very formative movie for me, especially for people like under the age of 40, in particular when they were younger. It really affected them a lot. So I think it's, again, a case of a great cultural change happening as a result. And I think Tracy Torme, the producer, is a guy who really, I've met Tracy as well. I think he's a very conscientious person who really tried to do a good job within the confines of Hollywood. But overall, I think it had a very positive effect on the culture and getting that conversation out there.
I'm sort of betwixt and between all of it. When I saw the movie way back when, I had a certain fixated opinion about how it was portrayed, and I have some very strong feelings about that. But I think anything that awakens the imagination in the general public, be it positive or negative, is important. You know, you can talk about people learning something. They learn it in a positive way sometimes. And being a teacher myself for all my career, and an educator and a principal, you get at learners in many, many different ways. You just don't attack learners from one specific point of view. Sometimes you got to brush the fur the other way, and sometimes you got to stroke the fur the other way. And I think it's the same thing with the general population. Sometimes you got to really kind of give them a slap in the face and say, "Well," and other times you have to stroke them. And I think in a way that these movies are coming out, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the work of Robbie Graham in the UK. Robbie Graham operates a fantastic website called Silver Screen Saucers. If you really want to find out what Hollywood is all about, this man has the most incisive perceptions about what Hollywood is doing, what they have done to both portray the negative part and the positive, and the whole enchilada. But his idea about what Hollywood does with respect to this issue is absolutely brilliant. And I think anything that awakens the public imagination moves the ball up the hill just a bit more. And I think of the movie, you know, Close Encounters, and I think about the guy, you know, putting the mashed potatoes together and then the mountain and dumping the stuff out. I mean, you go through that emotional process of trying to figure out what's going on in my mind. And I think once every human being on the planet at some point reaches that kind of realization that what's really going on here? And if we cause that question to be asked in one way or another, I think we're doing a good thing.
Yeah, and many people went directly from the movie to looking for the book and trying to get the real story, because most people do realize that when there's a Hollywood dramatization that, you know, you need to get the book if you want the facts, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, it's Victor Fletcher, Toronto Street News. I was wondering, Travis, we like in the paper we would actually teach you remote viewing. I've had contacts with a lot of psychics in the past, and I noticed that you told Richard mentioned you were on a car trip, and you told him there was something wrong with the suspension. I just wondered if you had picked up any psychic capabilities of any kind.
No, that was just mechanical experience.
My car really sucks.
I diagnosed the ailment, and that's what it was.
So he knows cars really well.
You didn't know, you know ahead of time a flat tire's coming? No.
I guess the big hint was with Richard having the steering wheel like this the whole time.
It was embarrassing. To be honest with you, my car was that bad.
Oh, I see.
It was that bad.
We were wondering if we would make it, but we made it.
A couple of months ago, I was on my cousin is a psychic, came from Australia and telling me about this. She said she saw them in vehicle in Guelph. So she was taken by her and her boyfriend on the way to Toronto about 30 years ago. You know, and she said they were taken. So there I am in Fergus. I thought, God, I thought I was safe in Fergus, you know. But anyway, as soon as I got on the highway, I said, okay, so I won't say all the language. Said, okay, where the F are you guys then? And about 10 minutes later, I was kind of like I came to I'm driving a car. Like, where am I? It was like what happened? You know, I was safe on the road and I was driving like not normal, but it was like I wasn't there for a while.
Thank you very much. I think we've pretty well run out the string here. I want to thank you all. Oh, one more question. Okay, sure, by all means. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, they're not going to kick us out.
Sorry, great. This last question. Hi guys. Got a real quick question for both of you. First to Travis. It was mentioned in the film that the trees that were around the site where you had your experience experienced this accelerated growth at the point which it happened. I'm just wondering, and it might be a personal question, did you ever notice that any of those experiences happened to you in terms of your growth as a human, mentally or physically, afterwards, even up to today? And just for Richard, what do you know about fleets of UFOs?
Fleets?
Fleets, as in multiple, not one or two or 10, but 30, 40.
Okay.
I had an experience a few years ago where I saw many, 30 to 40 from skyline to skyline, and hoping you could just expand on that a little bit.
Well, with the tree growth, one thing that, wasn't in there was that Ben Hansen did some follow-up research and discovered that the pine trees in the vicinity of the Chernobyl nuclear accident had they had done documentation that showed that they had accelerated growth in response to the radiation exposure. So when I got out of the truck, I left the door open, and the crewman that was sitting next to me was Ken Peterson. And he has now developed skin cancer on his right arm, the side nearest where the craft was coming from. So if there was some sort of healing process done by the aliens for me, they didn't have access to him to protect him from the consequences. But we did quite a bit of follow-up with various instruments on the site. And, I never wanted to be the bug in the jar, but so I didn't report on some things because, for one thing, I was very concerned that there would be negative medical consequences. But that turned out not to be the case. And I waited until I could go into my employers and get my attendance record to prove it, that I had not called in sick one time in 40 years. Now, it could be a coincidence, I try to live healthy, and but as far as having negative consequences, there certainly wasn't any.
Thank you.
Relating to your question about fleets, I really thank you for that question, because it's another of these fascinating, it opens up this door to a lot of questions. So, for example, there are a certain number of sightings over the years of what appear to be fleets of UFOs. There's a really good one that's actually being reopened that took place in the little town of Farmington, New Mexico from 1950. And I think this is actually turning out with a fresh investigation to be the real deal. Over several days, an enormous number of objects seen over this remote area. And you get reports of this every now and then. So all I can say is when I think of fleets of terrestrial vehicles, they're typically military. Mm-hmm. Like you see fleets of aircraft being seen that are usually military. And so I wonder if these are actual UFO fleets, are they engaged in a military operation? And if it's not that, then they're definitely in a kind of very tight hierarchical kind of structure. It just makes me wonder, what is their infrastructure? They have to have an infrastructure if they're here. This is something that no one ever asks about. Like, what is their society like? What is their psychology like? My feeling, a strong feeling on this, these things are seen all over the world. They're not just seen over human populations. They're seen in the most remote parts of the world, remote parts of Canada, in the Northwest Territories. I looked at a case from 1936, Northwest Territories. No one lives up there. There are objects up there. I was looking at cases of dealing with Russia and the Arctic Ocean. Lots of sightings up there. Just nothing there. Sightings in these remote mountain regions. So there's an infrastructure that is global. They have an interest in the whole planet. And they must have their own civilization. They must have their own infrastructure. And, damned if I know what that infrastructure is made out of, how it functions, do they use money? Do they, what do they do? I don't really know. And why are they doing it? Maybe they just live here, but if they do that, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. These are questions I just don't have an answer for, including why are there fleets?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
An evening like this just doesn't happen. It's planned well in advance. And I just want to take a moment to thank Chris for his fine work in putting this together. Great job, Chris. And someone who never gets enough recognition is his partner, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. She's always in the background, but thank you very much. Hal, to you and your kitchen crew and the sound people and the people who put this together here, this location, thank you very, very much. You did a wonderful job. And to our two wonderful guests, speakers, people, thank you very much for putting yourselves out on this. You're true warriors, crusaders, whatever you want to call it, and I think it's time that the kinds of things you're talking about are listened to with more acuity, not just in the general public, but with the people who have these microphones on TV and on the radio to get the word out to the public. This is something that we need to talk about in an authentic, open way, and it is okay to talk about these kinds of things. So I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. Safe home, and we'll see you again sometime.
And just everybody's welcome to hang around for a little bit, mingle, talk to each other. On your way out, grab one of these movie cards, share it with a friend, and also grab one of Paul Hellier's flyers. He wanted me to bring a few today, and it's one of his new initiatives. So I encourage you to grab one of these too, and I have them sitting right here at the exit.
I know Paul well enough. He doesn't want any of them back. Make sure they're all gone, okay?
All righty.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.